We at Pulsar, I mean, what we're about really is using audience data, online audience data and social media data to understand cultural movements, how people are reacting, how people are behaving online. And we've over the last sort of 18 months, we've had a specific focus on football. So what we've done, we've created a dedicated football Twitter account at Pulsar_football. Please do follow it if you don't already. And one thing we've been consistently doing on a weekly basis, both last season and this, is we've been tracking engagement for the Premier League clubs on social media. We've done this across Twitter and Facebook to get a kind of a cross-channel look at how the clubs are performing online. In terms of the methodology, what we do, it's not just a plain look at engagement, because what we would see is if we just calculate raw engagement, we would typically see that the bigger clubs would just get the bigger numbers because they have the biggest fan bases. So what we actually look at is we look at engagement as a portion of the fan base to kind of understand an engagement rate. So it's essentially showing how passionate and how kind of strongly the fan base of the club is reacting with the content that they put out. And we use this, we do this by using our own channel analytics platform, which is called Pulsar Core. And as you can see in the table there, we've got the final standings from last season. We've got Wolves were the runaway leaders from the very beginning of the season. And so the reason that we're really here with Owen Doyle at Sheffield United is because we've noticed this season a massively strong performance from them on social. If you look at this chart that we've got, we've basically compared the engagement that the top clubs had in weeks 1 to 7 last season, and we can see that Wolves are leading with 94 points, followed by a bunch of clubs 40 points, 38, 29, 27. This season, in the first 7 weeks, Sheffield United have amassed 217 points. They've basically posted the strongest few weeks, stronger than anything we saw last week, which is why we're extremely delighted to introduce Owen Doyle, the social media manager here at Sheffield United, just kind of pick his brain on what they're doing and why they've been so good. So yeah, thanks so much for joining us, Owen. And
yeah, thanks, Owen.
And just firstly, congrats on Sheffield United for getting back into the Premier League, away from social and digital. How's that been for you personally and for the club in the city?
I think especially getting promoted last season is something that will live long in my memory anyway. From the Ipswich game onwards, it went so fast. But when you look back at it, there was some massive moments, like when the team came back from Stoke, and just to see all the fans outside Bramall Lane. So excited to see the team actually go up, and you can see how much it meant to the whole fan base and the whole kind of city as a whole. It was huge.
Amazing. Yeah, that's great stuff. In terms of social media, and has there been a bigger focus on social now that you're back in the Premier League, and has it affected the content that you put out there?
Yeah, so thankfully the club have been the hierarchy have been good, so they've really kind of bought into what we're doing, and they've invested in us. So we've been able to bring on kind of 2 more staff. We've got a great videographer now and a great kind of social assistant. So that really helped with the output we're putting out. So we've kind of changed our mentality now that it's more so quality over quantity. And then it's kind of picking at them key moments in games or key stories to push out the right content. So like we spoke about earlier about Billy Sharp's goal at Bournemouth, that it was a huge moment, but it was a huge story as well, that Billy obviously has been in kind of the lower leagues, has always scored so many goals, finally got a chance in the Premier League, came on and scored that goal. And it's then capitalising on a moment like that you're pushing out the right content, so that you have that high impact imagery that's going to get that engagement, that you have like the right captions, that you don't need to overdo a caption. It's literally you want it as simple as possible, say what you're trying to say in as few words. And then when we're obviously able to put out video content after the holdbacks, it's having that right video content to generate that kind of emotive reaction in fans. So we have a deal now with Radio Sheffield that we're able to use their commentary. So they have some great commentary: Andy Giddens, Adam Oxley, Mike McCarthy. They show great emotion, and then that we're able to use that now on our videos. That is, instead of that, it's just ambience, that we're able to combine that with the crowd reaction, and that really has an effect on the content we put out.
Great. In terms of content, how much kind of scope is there for you guys to be spontaneous? Do you follow a very clear structure?
We have kind of a tone of voice guidelines, so we always try to keep it kind of humorous, but we never want to be like formal, but we never want to be cringy. We have, let's say, we try to find a middle ground, and we think we've been able to do that this season. We've refined it, and especially now we have, let's say, the main two voices will be me and our social assistant Jake. That when we're putting out stuff, that it feels the same and it sounds the same.
Mm-hmm.
So there is that kind of air of spontaneity, that if something does happen in a game, or it's after a game, we get a photo or we get a piece of video content that we can post it out. That means that so yeah, there has been, like, we're allowed to be spontaneous. We're not rigid, and we've been lucky to have that. I think that's allowed us to kind of create content and to post out content that is what fans want to engage with.
Yeah, obviously we know over the summer months how much fans are invested in signings. How does that work for you guys? Is that obviously a big thing that you guys are geared up for as well?
Yeah, so this summer it's been good for us. We've had 10 signings. They can be very kind of pressure situations because you don't get a lot of time. So we'll get, okay, you've half an hour with X, Y, and Z, and then this is going to be announced tomorrow at 10 o'clock. You have to be ready, or it's going to be announced in 2 hours time. Like, I think for Mo Bezic's signing, we had I think we had about 20 minutes to create something as a go. So luckily enough, we managed to create something very quickly and put it out, because he was signed right on the deadline. So it's big moments. But what we did is we had a template of kind of what we wanted. So that means that everyone knew what we were doing when the time came that we got a call. Okay, you've an hour to get this shot and get this video done or get this content created. So that helped. And then obviously, if you had a big signing like with Phil Jagielka, we kind of it's an opportunity to kind of create something that's going to resonate, because at the end it's a story, and when it's a story, your content goes farther. So we saw that obviously it was going to be massive news for our fans, and we saw that even some were a bit kind of skeptical. Oh, he's been released by Everton. So we kind of saw that we wanted to kind of change that tone. So we use commentary of key moments of goals he scored and key moments when he used to play, or back kind of prior to the 2007 season. And there was a key moment where Paul Walker, in his commentary on Radio Sheffield, that resonated with fans. So we decided that we have to use this piece of commentary. So we come up with a quick concept, created that. Even though it was 30 seconds, I think it's still one of our top 5 most performing posts across social.
Great. I'm just going to jump in there because we got a question
Yeah.
from Brandon Milburn. Thanks very much, Brandon. The first one I think is going to be aimed towards the fan engagement stuff, Samir. So essentially, from the table, how much of this is influenced by social ad spend versus the others?
Yeah, so social ad spend, it's not something that we specifically can pick up directly all the time. We do find there are some posts that are put out there that are targeted at a specific audience, but what we see is that the best performing posts, they almost don't need the ad spend. They've got such an organic kind of quality and nature to them that they'll resonate with the fan base regardless, and they'll fly and they'll do really well without needing any kind of promotion.
Great. And another question for Owen this time. So do you direct your graphics team, or does your graphics team need your social art direction, or is there like club aesthetic direction generally?
So again, that's within our brand guidelines. We have kind of a look and feel of what we want. So in our department, we're very much a team. There's no kind of like, let's say, there's no hierarchical kind of status. We're all kind of one, and we all bounce ideas off each other. So there is certain things, like obviously our red is a certain red. It's same again across our brand, and our fonts are different fonts, and they don't change. But then in terms of the creative style of the graphics we make, we have freedom into kind of what we want to do, or what, if Sam, our graphic designer, wants to do a specific design, if he sees something, gets inspiration for something, then we're all for it. And that's especially with kind of, we brought it all in-house, whereas we used to kind of go to agencies for kind of a graphic design, whereas now we brought it all in-house. So it makes it a lot easier to kind of we have fully control over what we want, and it makes it a lot easier to get our ideas over or our design over to create the graphics.
Cool. So moving on now to our third question, and this gives me the opportunity now to launch this poll that I mentioned a little bit earlier. So I'm going to do that as soon as I can figure it out. So I'm launching the poll now, so you guys should be able to see it pop up now on your screen. So as I said earlier, rivalries aside, which was your favourite standout tweet of the season so far from the Premier League clubs? Was it Guendouzi's 2-1, which then turned into a 2-2? Nice little comeback there from Watford. Was it Sheffield United and Crystal Palace with their Wi-Fi wars? Sheffield United acting at Owen, obviously, doing really well there, acting on the fact that Crystal Palace's Wi-Fi was a little bit dodgy that day. Norwich beating the press against Man City. So that's all to do with a tweet that went out from Norwich talking about how they managed to beat Man City 3-2. So that kind of ties in a little bit to the theme of beating the big clubs. And the other one is Crystal Palace, a little dig at Man United, who said they wished it was Man United beat Crystal Palace, but obviously they lost that game on the day. So yeah, get voting, guys. I can see you already are. And so we're going to crack on now to the next question, which is, when did you notice essentially a shift potentially in the tone of voice with regards to social media and Premier League clubs compared to maybe a few years ago? Has there been something significant that's happened, and how have you managed to like join the trend essentially?
I think football has kind of went with society in terms of social media content, but then specifically in the last year or two, I think Twitter and Instagram and Facebook have become more entertainment channels than they are, let's say, informative channels. I think everyone, you for yourselves included, you watch football now with a second screen. If you're not at a game, you're watching a game. You're watching it on the TV, but then you're watching it with your phone beside you, or even if you're at a game. Yeah. If it's halftime, you're on your phone. There's always that interactive element. So I think there has been a big shift that way. In terms of the type of content, I think specifically in the Premier League, everything has just kind of improved the last kind of 2 years. That everyone is kind of wants to be the front runner in creative and in kind of in terms of graphics and video. For a lot of our inspiration, we actually looked at college football in the US in terms of kind of creating that kind of new content. There's some incredible stuff built out and put out over there, and they're very much in the ilk that it's what I mentioned earlier, that it's quality over content, that it's trying to change that kind of that daily churn of, okay, we need to cover everything, and you're trying to push out content every half hour or every hour, that you're kind of bringing it back and looking at kind of more holistically, and that you kind of want the club to feel a different way, and I want the brand of the club to look and feel a different way, which is something that we've really tried to do over the last year, is to completely change how the brand looks and the brand feels. And in terms of like the quality of output, like when, let's say, I came in, I think it was about a year and a half ago, it was we used a lot of mobile phone content and
right.
And kind of mobile phone images, which they were fine in a way, but when you're trying to kind of create something that looks and feels kind of different to the rest, you want that kind of that high quality. So this year we've completely kind of upgraded our video department and kind of upgraded kind of our cameras and to a more kind of broadcast standard, which helps us in terms of our output, that we can now have the highest possible output that we can put out.
Amazing, yeah. So we've got another 2 questions to mention now. So the first one comes from Connor Dempsey. So he's kind of talking about essentially the Pulsar stuff, obviously something that we've been doing, and what kind of proactive actions can you take from some of the benchmark information that Pulsar has been able to provide? So like some of the fan engagement table stuff, for instance, does that just essentially influence a lot of the content that you do and keep you on track with regards to what you should be doing?
Yeah, well, I think it kind of gives you an inclination to what teams are going well, and then you can kind of have a look at kind of what content they're pushing out and see what can you do better. If one team is putting out a certain set of graphic and a certain set of style, or doing a certain set of video content, or they have their images in a certain style, that you're looking and say, oh yeah, that's going well for them. Can you look at that, see how it's going, and then try put your own twist on it to make it work for you? So that's definitely how the fan engagement table kind of comes in handy for us, that we're seeing who are the main competitors within the Premier League.
Yeah, and Callum Cheswick with another one here. Do you think that social media influences how the fans perceive certain things at the club in general?
I think they do. I think social media has a big kind of influence into how the players are perceived. A big thing for us is that we want the fans to understand what our players are like and what their personalities are like. I know I mentioned earlier on before the podcast about a piece we put out about Lise Mousset when he signed. We put out a behind the scenes piece. I think there was 5 seconds at the end where Ravel just spoke about how he felt this is going to be a good season, that we have really good players and a really good attitude, and fans was picked up on that 5-second clip of Ravel, and people had this perception that Ravel was this kind of certain type of player and a certain type of personality, and then fans are like, oh wait, he's really down to earth, he's really driven.
Yeah, he's on that bad boy thing, hasn't he?
And then all of a sudden they see, even though it's only a 5-second clip, they get to know his personality and know what he's like as a person, and they see that he's actually really driven and that he wants the club to do well. So I think that is a major part of social, and that's a part that we've tried to give our fans, that kind of, that they understand and they kind of get to see the players more, because that's all fans want. They want to see insight into what the players do on a daily basis here, what they're like, how they interact with staff, how they interact with the club in general. And we're looking at the players, they're very forthcoming to what we do. So we've been looking in that sense, and really going forward, that's what we want to try to do, is to give our fans more of an insight into what goes on here and how the players are.
Great. So just on that topic of fans, do you conduct any kind of formal research into understanding your online fan base?
Yeah, so we through the own insights of what Instagram and Twitter and Facebook provide us, we can see where our fans are based. Obviously, the majority of our fans are Sheffield based. But then at the end of last season, when we realised we were going to the Premier League, it was from kind of hierarchical. There was obviously areas where we can improve and kind of try to exploit in terms of kind of like the foreign markets to try and increase revenues. So we looked at where we kind of had connections, and we kind of decided to look into them more. So we looked at the Arabic region, the Turkish region, and the Spanish region, and we just set up kind of holder accounts. So we had them there, that if we had kind of the go ahead and the funding to then launch these effectively, instead of maybe we could have done it but not done it properly. If we're going to launch and we wanted to go ahead for leather, that you're putting a bit of weight behind it, that you're releasing the right content similar to the main channel. So I think that was kind of a big shift towards that.
That's great, because I mean, as you can see on the screen now, that really tallies up with what we conducted a quick bit of research into understanding the kind of the change in geographical scope of your fan base. You know, a year ago, in July and August 2018, it was only 7% from outside the UK, and this year, of course, having been promoted, it's jumped up to 19%. So yeah, it's something that we've definitely seen as a trend in general across European football, of these clubs moving into, for instance, like Roma with their English language account, and more recently with a Nigerian account, and of course like Wolves as well with a Portuguese and Spanish account. So yeah, it's great to see that you guys have used that to launch your own.
And I think even it's the Premier League's platform that has allowed us to do this, because especially with our media team, let's say kind of our head of media, the amount of work they put in to kind of make sure that the rights holders are getting the right amount of content and getting good content from us, so that when this is pushed out, so when Premier League Productions push it out to there, I think it's every country bar, I think it's less than 5 or something. The Premier League isn't broadcast to or something, some ridiculous number like that we're getting the right content, not just on social media, but on media, through traditional media as well, that we're then seeing the benefits from that. Oh, they see a piece on TV, oh, there's Sheffield United, there's their story. Then from that, they go and engage with our channels, and then our job then is to have the right content on that fans are then seeing and think, oh, this club has good content, it's good watch, it's easy when we flick through their feed, it's all images, engaging video that fans want to watch.
Amazing. Yeah, no, that's really interesting information. And yeah, I mean, as you said, like earlier, I think with you discovering that foreign language channel for the first time, obviously unveiling that That's been a really key theme. And obviously you've got this Sheffield United fan services account as well, which is really interesting. And that's obviously interesting to me as a marketer as well, working on social media. It's like how you connect with even your local fans, essentially. So it's not always just influence from like wider global information.
So our fan services account was kind of set up to be a dedicated channel to literally just fan information. And it was a good opportunity as well. That means that we can focus on our main handle to literally just be football content. And our idea is that if, let's say we had a good result against Everton at the weekend, and if a fan who's been at Everton, he's been on the train back, he hasn't got to see our feed, that he goes onto our feed and it's literally just all kind of high impact imagery and video that they want to see, so that they can then relive that moment. So then they're flicking down, that they're not getting, that there's no noise in between it, or no content that's not necessarily doesn't need to be there, but that it's kind of just informative, or it's that we're kind of, whether it's sponsored content, we've drawn back on that, and that we're working on close with our sponsors, that if they want to do an activation, that we work together, and it's an activation that isn't just kind of something that's simple, or kind of that is kind of a tick box, or we want to get something done, can you post this out, and such, that it's a piece that they tell a story, or it's a video. Like I know last season we did really good pieces with Ladbrokes on Glenn the groundsman, that it's a good piece, that it's not just something generic, that it's actually something connected to the club.
Of course,
and then especially and then in terms of fan services, so it literally just is now like ticket information, vital information for like match days. If we have a Blaze family hub, that if that's open at a different time, or what goes on in there, that it's literally match information that's kind of essential.
Okay, excellent. So we're gonna now go back to the poll. I see that you guys have been voting, and it doesn't surprise me that Samir's shaking his head as an Arsenal fan, that the little dig at Gwen Doozy has come out on top with 11 votes. After that, you've got Norwich beating the press, which is quite interesting actually, because that's more to do with on the pitch stuff.
Yeah, the philosophy of how they play.
Exactly. Yeah. Less to do with like the humorous content, etc. Some of the other themes. Third is the Wi-Fi wars. So obviously you've got some fans there, Owen. And yeah, the Crystal Palace thing coming in last. So what do you guys think about that?
I mean, I personally, as you said, I'm not very happy. I voted for the Man United, Chelsea, Crystal Palace kind of triple threat match, but I can see I'm kind of alone in that. So there we go.
Right. Yeah, we got one additional vote for the Norwich beating the press actually. So that's quite interesting. I guess that is the standout of all three really, because it's not really much of a dig, and they've actually really relied on the fact that they beat a big team. Again, which is one of the themes that we look at with regards to fan engagement. And less so to do with humorous content, to do with stuff that's going to engage with a wider audience. So that's really interesting. What do you think? What do you feel about Owen, about the Guendouzi dig thing? Are you going to basically wait like in the wings for something to happen that's going to be similar? Obviously, you've done it already. Yeah. But that's key, isn't it?
I think it's different clubs have different tones. So I think if you look at Liverpool, when we look at other clubs, we kind of look at the three main ones. I look at are Liverpool, Wolves, and Arsenal, and they're kind of all very different. I think Liverpool obviously the front runner in terms of their video content, but their tone is it's lighthearted, but the focus is always on Liverpool. They never put it on anyone else. Arsenal have a very light humour, very humorous, and then Wolves I think are very very stylish and very crisp in what they put out. Our tone is actually the Crystal Palace one is a funny one, because, and I remember I went down to Josh at Wolves, and I said it to him down there that it wasn't in our tone of voice, that we never wanted to do anything like that, just because it can always backfire, that we rather keep the focus on ourselves, and that's one of our brand guidelines, that we always speak about ourselves and always speak about Sheffield United. But that one was kind of, I think it was an open goal from 4 yards out that we couldn't miss. And it was probably the same for Watford as well, that they just saw the opportunity. But I think in a whole, from us anyway, we like to try to keep the focus on ourselves. But in terms of engagements, that can obviously work in your benefit, and you get lots of numbers.
Of course. Okay, so it's time to move on to the questions, and we've got quite a few. So feel free to hit us with more questions now if you want to. The first one is to do with commercial related content. So how would you manage commercial related content essentially and make it entertaining in the same way that you would make something entertaining like other standard content that you've been delivering?
I think what we tried to do is to make it more kind of, again, storytelling. That if a commercial company has a story or wants to tell a story about Sheffield United, that it's kind of subliminal branding, which is what we did with Ladbrokes last season for let's say our groundsman piece. I think the very first flash, it was Ladbrokes ex Mundial, the company that did it for Ladbrokes, and then they just told a story basically on Glen. So then Ladbrokes were getting a post that was good content, that we give them good access, and then it sees them in a good light that they're posting out kind of good content. So in terms of commercial, I think it's storytelling is major, not to just have a generic graphic that fans are going to turn off on, or something kind of that's like a tick box, that you really kind of look into it and work with the club in terms of if you can't use the players, because obviously the players' times are very, very precious, that you can try to tell a story about the football club, or a story about the city, or a journey that someone had. If you use fans, that it resonate with the fans, that fans actually want to watch it, and that's engaging with the fans.
Cool. And a really interesting question here actually from Daniel Diak, who has referenced the lower leagues and said that essentially scrapping matchday programs could be something that happens in the future. So do you think that for maybe teams in the lower leagues, social media might replace programs entirely on match days? So Instagram stories and things like that.
We're very lucky here that we have great kind of content writers. So our program has never really had a dip in it so far, and even last season in the championship it actually saw a rise. So we're very lucky in that way. I think it is still a tradition within football that if you go to Stamford Bridge, because you're a Chelsea fan, or you go to the Emirates, it's kind of like a staple of matchday that you want to go get your matchday program. There is obviously that kind of, that it is available. Some clubs do have a digital version. We decided against it just because we still think it's a staple of matchday. But it definitely is there, and maybe in the future, maybe it may become completely digital, that fans no longer want that. But in my opinion, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think it still is kind of that part of match that fans still want to get that souvenir of a huge game.
Yeah. I mean, as a kind of match-going fan, I completely agree. The first thing I do, I walk down those stairs and gravitate straight towards the program. So, almost a case of whether I read it or not before the game, or if it's a bad result, I won't read it after the game. But it's something that I feel like I'm drawn to doing every time I go to the stadium. So yeah, I agree with you. I think it's such a big part of football, especially English football as well.
Yeah.
I think that's going to stick around. Yeah.
Yeah, and we've got another question here to do with TikTok. Now, I don't know if you guys use TikTok yet, or if you've ever considered it. But it seems that this person thinks it might be able to fit into a social media strategy in the future. Do you think that you've got any ideas on that? It
definitely can, and I think the engagement rates and kind of the follower increases that teams have seen, other accounts have seen, is definitely something that's intrigued us. The only reason why we haven't is because I think when you want to release something new similar to our Arabic channel, that there has to be a serious amount of weight behind it and a serious strategy, that you're not just creating it and then all of a sudden in a few weeks you don't have the manpower or the content to put on it, and then it kind of gets left in the back burner. So for us, it is something that's there in the future that we want to attack. It just depends if we kind of stay in kind of the Premier League long enough, if we have then that manpower that the Premier League kind of will give us, and kind of that extra funding that we can then have someone dedicated to creating vertical content for Snapchat as well, and for kind of Instagram, that different kind of feel and normal football content. I think there's a lot of clubs already on it. You have I think Real Madrid have recently gone on it, and it's one of them kind of social media channels that seems to be growing, especially within a younger demographic.
Yeah.
So I think it will be a major player in years to come, and one that we will look to get into.
And we've got a question here from Ashley Joseph, who works for the Football Foundation, which is a charity aimed at, and their aim is essentially on social, is to show the good work that they do.
Yeah.
So he asks whether or not there's any ideas that you may be able to provide, or even Samir, for instance, that would be good social to push for a charity in a charity situation.
I think the first thing is the way you put it out. Like the little tips and tricks that we use, a lot of other teams will use in terms of the size of content. So on Twitter, we'll use a lot of square video, because the simple reason is that it takes up more on your timeline, takes up more on your phone. Same for Instagram, we use it's 180 by 1350. Again, it's something simple, but again, it's when you're scrolling on your phone, we want our content to take up as much of your phone as possible. So there's little tricks like that you have the right size for the right social media channel that you're posting out. And then I don't want to be harping on, but it's again, it's a story that you're telling the story effectively, and that you're telling the story with the right content. Maybe if he might only have a budget, because obviously it's a charity, you might have a budget of a certain amount, that you're then using that budget to maybe tell 2 stories perfectly, using the right content creator and using the right kind of video quality, then 10 stories maybe that are lesser quality, or you put less kind of budget towards, that you're kind of more, again, to go back to Kent, it's more so about quality than quantity, that if you're able to tell that one story and it goes farther because it looks better, it looks more crisp, it's shot better than 10 pieces that maybe are shot maybe on someone's mobile, or that are shot on a lesser quality camera, that can work in your benefit.
Sure. And what about maybe the off season? So we've got an anonymous question here that talks about content during the off season, essentially, so pre-season, and how do you still make pre-season content interesting if you haven't got much of season content to work with?
So pre-season can be quite a good chance to kind of make yourself kind of known to the players, and known, like to get your team known to the players. And what they tend to be a lot more relaxed, a lot more lighthearted, because obviously there's no games, no high pressure situations. You then can be closer to them and kind of get, even if it's little snippets of insight into training, insight into how the personalities are. So we did a lot in the summer when we went to Portugal, trying to get little pieces of what the players are doing, kind of at training, little bits and bobs of kind of outside training as well, little pieces like that, and then kind of for generic content creating. Unfortunately, this summer we didn't have our kind of new staff in time and place to create content, but I think particularly for next season, we want to kind of have a bank of content, of like kind of YouTube content, of kind of generic kind of games and stuff that we can then use and utilize throughout the season. We only unfortunately got to use 1 or 2 in Portugal, but then pieces like that were done really well. And I think for a lot of kind of smaller clubs, or a lot of that, not to say don't have the Premier League budgets, that can be something that useful that you can do, is then to kind of shoot all your content, have a big bank of it in the summer, whether it's a photo shoot, which is what we did in, let's say, last season. And this season we had the Premier League Media Day, but to get all your images and get all your kind of photo shoots done early on, then you have that bank of content.
And great. We'll finish with this last question from Christopher Schenk, who says, how can social media bridge the gap in terms of communication and perceptions between the league, office, players and staff, and consumers and fans? So in terms of domestically or abroad.
Repeat
yeah, sure. No, yeah, of course. So social media essentially bridging the gap in terms of how how the league is perceived, so like league, office, players and staff, so any of that group, and how fans see it, essentially how fans and consumers see it. So is there any insight as to what the guiding vision is for stakeholders and executives? How would you implement strategies for content development, and how might it relate to wider marketing operations and efforts? So taking into consideration the separation between.
Well, I think what we did in the summer, and it took a while, was we put documents together. So one was our tone of voice document, so that if it did change and if we did get more staff, that we have something there, or if so we have someone specific on our women channel and someone specific on our development, or if we let's say someone, again, like I said, new come in, that they have a platform that they can see what the tone of voice is, how we communicate our content. Then again, we have similar with our social media brand guidelines, which are different to our normal brand guidelines in terms of content, and they give more freedom, but they still have that rigid aspects to it in terms of how we kind of deliver content. And then the big thing for us as well is our strategy going forward is we're trying to build our database more. So instead of maybe just posting out information on social, that we then have that database that you can drive information to in terms of like the preferences of what fans actually want to hear. So if a fan wants to see a certain aspect of the club, if they want to have, let's say we have a lottery department, if they want to see lottery offers, if they want to have commercial offers, that they can then click into that and then get that offer directly to them. That's a big thing that we kind of have tried to do, and that we're actually just about to launch a new CRM system. So then hopefully that will allow us to take that kind of generic information off social and then put that towards again towards more so email marketing, kind of that, using that CRM system. And I think that kind of the strategy, I think has to be a buy-in for the whole club, and it can be hard to tell other people when other stakeholders are coming from different departments, or can you put this on social? It's something you're like, well, I can't put that because it's not the right information, it's not the right way to do it. And it does take time to get that kind of organizational buy-in to what you're doing, because it's a change from the norm, it's a change to what you're used to. And I think that especially last season, and I think it's a lot of the same in a lot of clubs, that it's a change to try to say, look, this content is not doing well and it's having an effect on our performance, particularly with us on Facebook last season. We saw there was a lot of information going out there, and it's completely hampering our performance, because, or as you know, if you have a string of poor performing Facebook posts, it's going to affect your algorithm. So we've completely took off information off Facebook because it used to completely hamper us, and now our Facebook is literally imagery and video and our performance is completely enhanced now. So we're not growing on Facebook, which a lot of people or a lot of clubs, they kind of might be in the growth of Facebook are quite low. Lucky that we've been able to kind of increase our growth rate. Our rates of Facebook have been quite good because we're not getting that information now. Instead of go through emails or go in the fans account.
And we'll wrap up with this very last. So this will be the last question. I've said that already, but this one is a pretty good one actually. So how do club managements essentially see the social media effort? So is it like a case of primarily boosting merchandise sales? Is it purely down to the fact that, you know, there's an increase in marketing budget if the social media performance is good? Or is it like, building a brand across the globe essentially?
I think the big thing what senior management is want to build the brand and build the club's awareness. The big thing for us this year is to capture as many fans as we can, to take the opportunity that we are in the Premier League. And then, like I said, similar to that CRM system and we're also launching single sign-on, is to then convert them fans from social media followers or fans of the club, that we can then be able to know how they're interacting with the club, what way they're interacting. Are they going from social directly then to our website? Are they watching us? Are they watching the game? Are they going straight to our club shop? And how are we capturing that data? How are we then going to kind of use that? Is that person then coming to a game? Or if there's some kid, an 18-year-old from Thailand interacting with us, that we put him on a different journey on the club, depending on how he's interacting with the club. If he's then going on our website and he's registering, that we're sending him on a different journey to what a fan from Sheffield, from Dronfield, or from the local area would be going on.
Brilliant. Okay, so I think if we're all done, I think we'll wrap it up now. Thanks so much, Owen, for joining us. Honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure, especially to say that we're broadcasting live from Bramble Lane. That was a real pleasure indeed. And thanks a lot, Samir, for obviously jumping in and contributing a lot to a lot of the Pulsar stuff. I think the fan engagement stuff is a lot clearer now to the wider audience, which is great. And we'll continue to deliver this content as the season progresses. I'm sure, obviously, we'll be hoping that Sheffield United are at the top the whole time. And we'll keep you posted with that, obviously, consistently on every Friday. You'll see the fan engagement table go up. Thanks again for all your questions as well. Thanks for sticking with us. I've been Tom Brayshaw. We've got Samir Shah here and Owen Doyle, and that's everything. Take care.